We have a bicycle here that is having trouble shifting. We notice a little bit of excessive noise coming from the rear gears, and we're having difficulty shifting and staying in the gear that we select. So we're going to make some adjustments here that every consumer can in order to help the shifting. The most important thing you're going to do when you make any adjustments to your shifting on the rear wheel is to make sure that the wheel is actually in the bicycle properly. I know it sounds silly, but I can't tell you how many times I've seen professional riders come to me when I'm working at an event and the rear wheel is not in the bicycle properly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the wheel on the ground. I'm going to open the quick release skewer in the rear. So now the wheel can actually slide in or out, as you can see here. And with the bike in an upright position, I'm just going to give the top of the tire a smack. What that's going to do is make sure that the axle is properly set in the dropouts. And you can hear that solid clunk after I hit the wheel. So we're pretty assured that the rear wheel is in there properly. And then I'm going to tighten up the quick release lever according to the manufacturer's specifications. I'm going to put the bicycle back up into the stand, and now we're going to analyze what's happening here. This is a road bike, and this has what's called dual control levers. All of our shifting is accomplished via the brake lever or this smaller lever that's behind it. Some bicycles will have shifters that are located on the down tube. You might see these on bikes that are 15 or 20 years old. But most new modern road bikes will have what's called the dual control lever. So all my shifting is taken care of right here. I'm going to begin by pedaling the bicycle as normal. And I'm going to shift through the gears to find what the problem is. And we can hear a little bit of ticking there. So it's a little bit of rubbing that I don't desire. And the shifting is a little bit slow too. Not quite doing what I want. So a couple of general rules for the adjustments that you can make at home. On all rear derailleurs, you have what's called a barrel adjuster at the back side. You can turn this clockwise or you can turn it counterclockwise. The effect this has on the shifting is very simple. When you're standing behind the bicycle, once again, stand behind the bicycle, and you turn this in a clockwise manner, what's going to happen is the derailleur is actually going to move down just a little bit. And obviously when we turn it in a counterclockwise manner, the derailleur is going to move up slightly. So what that does for your shifting is very simple. If I'm in a smaller cog in the back and I desire to shift up to a larger cog in the back and it doesn't quite go there, what I want to do is adjust the derailleur to be moved up a little bit more. So in this case, if I had trouble going from the small cog to the next largest cog, I would turn the barrel adjuster counterclockwise. The effect that has is that it centers the derailleur a little bit more towards the larger cog in the back. So let's try that. That seemed to help out a little bit, but we're not quite there. We're still getting a little bit of excessive clicking and ticking back there. And as I look at the shifting, we can actually see that we're having the opposite problem here. The derailleur doesn't want to shift down to the smaller one. And you can see just a very slight hang up between this gear and that gear. It's a little hesitant when it shifts down. So in that case, what I would do is actually turn the barrel adjuster clockwise. And that's going to cause the derailleur to actually move down just a little bit more. Effectively, that tightens or loosens the cable. That's really what's happening. But all we need to worry about is when we turn this clockwise, the derailleur moves down a little bit and makes the shifts to the smaller cogs a lot easier. When we turn this counterclockwise, it makes the shifts to the larger cogs a little bit easier. And I'm using the word larger cog and smaller cog because the word high gear and low gear can be somewhat confusing to people. So I'm just using the terminology larger cog or smaller cog. So to make it shift easier to the larger cog, turn it counterclockwise. To make it easier to shift to the smaller cog, we're going to turn it clockwise. Some of these adjustments can be as simple as a quarter or a half a turn because your cable is stretched or some of your housing has settled. But if you find yourself turning it and turning it and turning it and turning it, there might be a bigger problem there. So this just covers a system that's working perfectly. We know the cables are clean. We know the housings are clean. There's no kinks in the cable. They're not frayed. For all intents and purposes, this might have been something that just happened when we took our bicycle out of our car and put it together. And some of the things that you want to be aware of, like I said, if you find yourself just turning this endlessly and you're still having problem shifting, you likely want to bring it to a bicycle shop to have them adjust something else. Some of the things that you cannot fix as a consumer without special tools would be if the mount for the rear derailleur was bent in one direction, that will cause the derailleur not to track properly. And no amount of barrel adjustment back here is going to fix that. Another thing that would be something the shop would have to fix would be if there was a kink or a bend in the cable or the housing. That usually requires a new piece of housing, which will only cost a couple of dollars, or a new cable, which will only cost $5 or $6. So for the most simple adjustments, to repeat once again, turn the barrel adjuster as you look at the bike from the back clockwise, and that moves the derailleur down a little bit more, counterclockwise, and that moves it up a little bit more. It's as simple as that. On your bicycle, you have front and rear derailleurs. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the things you might be able to do to help the front shifting work a little bit better. Some of the issues that you might experience with a front derailleur that's out of adjustment would be when you shift it, the chain doesn't quite want to go up onto the larger or fall down to the smaller chain ring. And one of the things you might hear is the chain's going to make a noise like this. It's kind of like a grinding noise. And it may or may not climb onto the large chain ring or the small chain ring after a certain amount of time. So traditionally, the front derailleur is the most difficult part on a bicycle to set up, and for the average consumer, it might be something best left to the shop. One thing that you can look for is just to make sure that the derailleur is not actually smashing into any of the chainring teeth on here. And you want to check the clearance to make sure that the cage does not hit those teeth, and also back here. One of the most common problems with the front derailleur would be a cable that is stretched, a cable that is broken, some of the housing, this stuff right here, that may be compromised. Or if it was working perfectly before and your bike tipped over and now your shifting doesn't work, your derailleur may have been knocked out of adjustment. So aside from just looking at the general issues that I pointed out, making sure that the derailleur does not hit the chain ring, that's going to be a very limited area of adjustment. On the bicycles we build, we actually install inline barrel adjusters, which will act the same way as they do on the rear derailleur. That is, we can tighten up the cable and it would help the derailleur move, in this case, out a little bit easier, or we can loosen it, in which case it would make the derailleur fall to the smaller chainring a little bit easier. But this is a very difficult part to adjust on the bike. Many mechanics spend sometimes 15 or 20 minutes on this particular adjustment to ensure that it's going to work properly.